When I was pregnant, my cruel mother-in-law kicked me out of my own home and locked the door behind me. She demanded that I transfer ownership of the $5 million house to my husband, threatening divorce if I refused. My husband stood by her side, offering no support. When I refused, they threw my belongings out, shoved me away, and told me to go away. In that moment, all I could feel was helplessness, and I left without a word. But that was only the beginning. I vowed revenge, secretly crafting a plan to take both of them to court. When the day came, the court's ruling stunned everyone. My name is Lily, and I've always believed that true fulfillment comes from independence. At 35, I had built a successful career as a real estate agent in suburban Denver. I worked tirelessly, saved every penny, and finally bought the home of my dreams for $5 million. To me, that house was more than just a place to live, it was the embodiment of everything I had worked for. I had always imagined a loving marriage, so when I met Ryan, a 38-year-old tech consultant, everything seemed perfect. He was charming, intelligent, and appeared to appreciate my ambition. Our wedding was everything I had hoped for, but I had no idea it would mark the beginning of a nightmare. On our wedding day, I was filled with joy, but as I walked down the aisle, something felt off. Ryan's eyes, usually full of warmth, seemed distant. I brushed it off, thinking it was just wedding nerves. We were about to start our life together, after all. We moved into my home after the ceremony, eager to begin this new chapter. At first, everything seemed fine, but soon, I noticed a change. Ryan became more distant, and his mother, Margaret, a 65-year-old retired schoolteacher, began showing up uninvited, offering unsolicited advice on everything from my cooking to my home decor. "Lily, dear, have you thought about changing the curtains? They don't match the sofa," she would say with an air of superiority. I wanted to stand up for myself, but I held back. I figured maybe it was just the way families interacted. Perhaps I was overthinking it. As time passed, Margaret's critiques chipped away at my confidence. I found myself questioning every decision I made, my taste, my choices, even my worth as a wife. One afternoon, I sat down with Ryan, hoping to share my concerns. "I love our home, but your mom's comments are really starting to bother me. Can we talk about setting some boundaries?" I asked, searching for understanding in his eyes. He sighed, looking away. "She's just trying to help, Lily. You know how mothers are. Family sticks together." A wave of disappointment washed over me. Was I supposed to tolerate his mother's intrusion for the sake of family? I stayed silent, hoping things would improve on their own. The real turning point came one evening when I returned home to find Margaret standing in my living room, surrounded by suitcases. "I'm moving in," she announced, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze. "What are you talking about?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "This is my son's house too," she replied matter-of-factly. "He needs his mother." I turned to Ryan for support. "Ryan, please, this isn't right." He looked torn, glancing from his mother to me. "Mom just wants to help us. We can make it work, Lily." I felt a cold wave of betrayal. The one person I thought would stand by me had sided with his mother. I was now fighting for my place in my own life, in my own home. Weeks passed, and things only escalated. Margaret's presence was stifling, and I felt more and more isolated. When I discovered I was pregnant, I hoped it would bring us closer, but Margaret's response was cold and dismissive. "You'll need to be careful with your diet. We don't want any complications." I longed for support during such a special time, but instead, I felt alone and unwanted. The joy I had once felt about our future was quickly fading. One late night, after a long, exhausting day, I returned home to find the door locked. I knocked, expecting Ryan to let me in, but instead, I heard Margaret's voice from behind the door. "You're not coming in unless you agree to transfer ownership of this house to Ryan," she said, her tone final. My heart sank. "Margaret, this is my home, let me in." "Not anymore," she replied coldly. "Either sign the papers, or I'll call the police. You're trespassing." The weight of it hit me hard. Everything I had worked for, everything I had built, was being ripped away. Tears filled my eyes as I realized I had nowhere to turn. I had become a stranger in my own life. That night, I sat on the porch, feeling the cold seep into my bones. I couldn't let this be the end. I needed a plan, a way to take back control. I couldn't let them see how vulnerable I felt. I decided to stay with my parents for a while to regroup. My father, a retired police officer, and my mother, a loving homemaker, welcomed me with open arms. "Lily, you can stay as long as you need," my mom said, enveloping me in a warm hug. "We'll figure this out together." I appreciated their support, but inside, something was burning. I was tired of being the victim in my own life. It was time to take back what was mine. I needed a plan. More than that, I needed help. That's when I reached out to Sarah, a close friend from college who had gone on to become a successful lawyer. She had always been someone I could trust, and now I desperately needed her legal expertise. "Lily, I'm glad you called," Sarah said when I told her everything. "This is unacceptable, and you can fight back. The first step is filing for divorce. It's the only way to take control of your life again." Her words felt like a call to arms. I had thought about divorce for a while, but hearing it from Sarah made it feel like a real, tangible option. But what if Ryan retaliates? And Margaret, she's shown how ruthless she can be. "Let them come," Sarah replied confidently. "You've got the law on your side, and the emotional abuse you've endured is not something to overlook. We can build a solid case." Over the next few days, we created a detailed plan. Sarah would help me collect evidence of the emotional abuse and manipulation from both Ryan and Margaret. We'd document everything: text messages, voicemails, even the threats I'd received. I started keeping a journal, noting every moment, every cruel comment that chipped away at my sense of self. One evening, as I wrote in my journal, I remembered a specific incident that had pushed me to my breaking point. It had been just a few weeks before I moved out. I came home after a long day, eager to share my pregnancy news with Ryan, but instead, I found Margaret sitting at the kitchen table, rifling through my personal documents. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaky with disbelief. "Just making sure you're financially prepared for the baby," she said coldly, without looking up. "Margaret, that's none of your business. You can't just invade my privacy like this. You're about to be a mother. You should be thinking about the bigger picture," she replied, her words laced with control. "If Ryan's finances suffer, we all suffer. We don't want that, do we?" I had felt so small in that moment, so powerless, but now, remembering it only fueled my determination. I wouldn't let her or Ryan control me anymore. As I continued planning, I found strength in knowing I wasn't alone. Sarah stood by me, and my parents offered the emotional support I needed to move forward. One night, over dinner with my mom and dad, I shared my decision to file for divorce. "I can't let them control me any longer," I said, my voice full of resolve. "I want my home back, and I need to be free from their manipulation." My dad looked at me with pride in his eyes. "You're making the right choice, Lily. We're with you every step of the way." The next day, I took a deep breath and walked into Sarah's office to begin the process. My heart pounded as I signed the divorce papers, a mix of fear and empowerment filling me. This was my first step toward reclaiming my life. In the weeks that followed, we worked relentlessly to prepare for the court battle. Every day felt like a whirlwind of emotions as I gathered evidence and prepared my testimony. It felt like I was gearing up for a war, and I was determined to win. Then, the day of the hearing came. My stomach churned with anxiety as I sat in the waiting area of the courthouse, surrounded by others facing their own battles. My palms were clammy, my heart racing. "Lily, you're going to do great," Sarah reassured me, sitting beside me and holding my hand. "Just remember, you're fighting for yourself and your future." Her words gave me the courage I needed. I took a deep breath and focused on the outcome I wanted. I was done being afraid. I was ready to face Ryan and Margaret in court and take back control of my life. As the judge called my case, a surge of adrenaline shot through me. This was it, the moment I had prepared for. I walked into the courtroom, ready to confront my past and fight for my future, unaware of the shocking twists that awaited. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy with tension. The murmur of other cases filled the air, and the sound of a gavel striking echoed in the distance. My heart raced when I saw Ryan and Margaret sitting at the front. Ryan's face was stone cold, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Margaret, however, looked calm, her eyes sharp and calculating as they scanned the room before landing on me. A chill ran down my spine. "Lily, stay calm," Sarah whispered as we took our seats. "We've got this, you're not alone." The judge, a no-nonsense middle-aged woman, entered the room, and everyone stood. I felt my resolve strengthen. This was my chance to expose everything, to reveal the emotional abuse and manipulation I had endured. The proceedings began, and Sarah stood up, presenting our case with clarity and precision. She outlined my struggles with Ryan and Margaret, focusing on the emotional toll it had taken on me, especially during my pregnancy. She made it clear that I had the right to live freely in my own home. Your Honor, Sarah began, my client Lily is here today to reclaim her life from the control of her husband and mother-in-law, who have subjected her to emotional abuse and coercion. We have evidence of their manipulative behavior, and we believe this warrants immediate action. I glanced at Ryan. He remained expressionless, but his grip on the edge of the table tightened. Margaret, however, seemed unfazed, leaning in to whisper something to him, a sly smile on her face. The hearing continued, and my stomach twisted as I listened to Ryan's lawyer present his side. He painted me as an unfit wife who was trying to alienate her husband from his family. Lily is exaggerating her claims to gain control over their shared assets, the lawyer argued. But I was ready. When it was my turn to testify, I stood up, took a deep breath, and locked eyes with Sarah. She gave me a subtle nod, and I knew I had to be strong. I was excited to marry Ryan and build a life with him. I began, my voice steady, but from the start, I felt like a stranger in my own home. His mother moved in without my consent and began dictating every aspect of my life. I was locked out of my home after a long day at work, and when I tried to talk to Ryan, he chose to support his mother over me. I recounted the night when Margaret locked me out, explaining the threats she made and how I had felt powerless. I could see the judge leaning forward, her interest piqued. I never imagined I'd be fighting for my home and my freedom, I continued, my emotions rising. This isn't just about property, it's about who I am and who I want to be. I refuse to raise my child in an environment where I'm constantly belittled and controlled. The courtroom was silent for a moment as I finished. The judge scribbled notes, and I noticed Ryan's expression faltering. A wave of empowerment washed over me. I had spoken my truth, and it felt like the beginning of something bigger. I had spoken my truth. As the hearing wrapped up, the judge turned a stern gaze toward Ryan and Margaret. You both need to understand the gravity of this situation, she said. The emotional well-being of a mother and her child is paramount, and the court takes this matter very seriously. Her words echoed in the silent courtroom. As I stood to leave, Sarah gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. You did incredibly well, Lily, she said. I'm confident we've made a strong case. But as I walked past Ryan and Margaret, I noticed their tense, angry whispers. Their expressions were cold and calculated, and I felt my stomach drop. I knew this wasn't over. They weren't the type to admit defeat, and the looming threat of their retaliation followed me out of the courthouse like a dark shadow. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions, anxiety mixed with hope as I prepared for what lay ahead. Sarah and I continued to gather evidence, knowing Ryan and Margaret would not back down without a fight. They were like a storm brewing on the horizon, unpredictable and dangerous. Then, a week later, Sarah called me. Lily, she said, her voice serious, we need to meet. Ryan and Margaret are planning to fight back, and they're taking a low road. What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing. They're trying to discredit you, claiming you're emotionally unstable and unfit to be a mother. Anger coursed through me. How can they stoop so low? It's all lies. It's a desperate move, Sarah said, but we can counter it. Their actions only make our case stronger. We need to document everything, every message, every instance of abuse. It's crucial. That night, I poured my memories into my journal, every belittling comment, every undermining act, every moment I was made to feel invisible. It all came flooding back. The process was painful but empowering. With each word, I reclaimed a piece of myself that they had tried to take away. The notification for another court appearance arrived a few days later. My anxiety spiked, but so did my determination. This time, I wasn't just defending myself, I was fighting for my child's future. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. Ryan and Margaret were already seated, their faces hardened with defiance. The tension between us was palpable, but I was no longer afraid. Sarah presented our case with precision, highlighting the emotional manipulation I endured. She submitted text messages from Margaret, messages dripping with passive-aggressive insults disguised as concern. The judge examined the evidence carefully, her furrowed brow a glimmer of hope. When it was my turn to speak, I faced the judge with steady resolve. Your Honor, I began, I'm not here to tear apart a family. I'm here to reclaim my life and provide a safe, nurturing environment for my child. For too long, I've been controlled and belittled. Today, I'm standing up for myself and my baby. As I spoke, I felt the support of my parents in the back of the courtroom, their quiet presence a pillar of strength. I shared my most painful memories, being locked out of my home, silenced in my own space, and stripped of my dignity. The atmosphere shifted. I could see the judge's demeanor soften, her empathy evident. Even Ryan's stoic mask began to crack, though Margaret remained defiant, her manipulative tactics faltering under the weight of truth. After hours of arguments and testimonies, the judge called for a recess. The waiting was excruciating, but I held on to hope. When the judge returned, her verdict was clear and firm. Based on the evidence and testimonies presented, she said, "It is evident that Lily has been subjected to emotional abuse and manipulation. This court grants her full custody of her child and sole ownership of the house. Ryan and Margaret will face penalties for their actions." Relief washed over me, bringing tears to my eyes. I had won. I had fought for my rights, for my child, and for the life I deserved. As we exited the courtroom, Sarah hugged me tightly. "You did it, Lily. You fought for your future, and you won." Smiling through tears, I replied, "I did it because I finally believed I deserved better." In the weeks that followed, I moved back into my home. The act of reclaiming that space felt like a rebirth. I painted the walls in bright, cheerful colors, redecorated the rooms, and filled the house with love and hope. Each change symbolized my journey from darkness to light. Betrayal had not broken me, it had forged me into someone stronger. I was no longer just a victim, I was a survivor. I had learned to stand up for myself, to fight for what I deserved, and to protect what mattered most. As I cradled my growing belly, I made a promise to my unborn child. "We will build a life filled with love, respect, and resilience. You will always know your worth and the strength you carry within." This was not just a new chapter, it was a new legacy, one built on empowerment, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. I was ready for whatever came next.